Darlington, Indiana, a small, quiet town of less than 1,000 people. A place where neighbors know each other by name, where Friday night football games are the highlight of the week, and where life seems simple, steady, and safe. But beneath the stillness of this Midwest community, in November of 2016, a tragedy unfolded, one that would leave scars too deep to heal, one that would redefine how a family, a community, and a nation viewed the fragility of home. This is the story of Brandi Worley, the mother who murdered her own children. The early life of Brandi Worley. Brandi Luthold, later known as Brandi Worley, grew up in Indiana in a life that, to most observers, appeared ordinary. Friends described her as cheerful, outgoing, and someone who wanted what many young women in small towns dreamed of: a steady marriage, a family, and children of her own. She met Jason Worley in high school. Their relationship, like many young romances, blossomed quickly. Jason was steady, quiet, reliable. Brandi was lively and social. They complemented each other, or so it seemed. In time, their relationship grew into marriage. Soon, they were blessed with 2 children, Tyler, born in 2009, and Charlie, born in 2013. From the outside looking in, Brandi was living the small-town American dream. A young couple, 2 beautiful kids, a modest house in Darlington, and a future filled with possibilities. But inside the marriage, things were not as perfect as they appeared. Cracks in the marriage. As years passed, tension began to creep in. Brandi wanted control in the household, and Jason often clashed with her over finances, responsibilities, and raising the children. Friends noticed that Brandi could be manipulative, using guilt, anger, or silence when things didn't go her way. Jason, on the other hand, was more reserved, often keeping his frustrations bottled up. By 2016, their marriage was on the brink. Jason had grown distant. He spent more time online, venting on forums about the struggles of his relationship. Some of those posts, later discovered, revealed his unhappiness. He admitted he no longer trusted Brandi, that he felt trapped in a marriage that was draining him. Eventually, Jason made a decision that would change everything. He filed for divorce. For him, it was a way forward. For Brandi, it was the ultimate betrayal. The days before the tragedy, Brandi's reaction to the divorce filing was explosive. She felt her world collapsing. She feared losing not just her husband, but also her children. Friends later described her as withdrawn, angry, and paranoid in the days leading up to the tragedy. She didn't openly threaten harm, but there were small glimpses of instability, moments of coldness toward Jason, passive-aggressive remarks, and in hindsight, signs of emotional unraveling. On November 16, 2016, the night before the murders, Jason attended a dance recital with his daughter, Charlie. They smiled, posed for photos, and shared moments that would later become haunting reminders of what was lost. Brandi, meanwhile, stayed home, brooding over the reality of her unraveling family. The night of November 17, 2016, in the early hours of November 17, the Worley household was quiet. Tyler and Charlie had been tucked into bed. Jason, exhausted, had fallen asleep in the basement. Upstairs, Brandi sat awake, her mind racing. Divorce papers, the looming custody battle, the fear of losing control. For reasons still debated today, she came to a horrifying conclusion: if she couldn't have her children, no one would. Armed with a combat knife she had purchased just days earlier, Brandi entered her children's bedrooms. What happened next is almost unspeakable. She first went to Tyler, just 7 years old. As he slept, she stabbed him repeatedly. Then she turned to Charlie, just 3 years old, and did the same. Both children were killed in their beds, their lives stolen in silence. After murdering her children, Brandi stabbed herself in the neck in a half-hearted attempt at suicide. Then she calmly picked up the phone and dialed 911. Her voice was eerily steady as she confessed. "I just stabbed myself and I killed my 2 children." The 911 call, the 911 operator, trained to handle emergencies, was stunned. Brandi's tone was emotionless, almost detached. She gave her address, repeated what she had done, and waited for authorities to arrive. When police entered the home, the scene was horrific. Tyler and Charlee were found lifeless in their beds. Brandi was alive but bleeding from her self-inflicted wounds. She was taken into custody immediately, her calmness chilling the officers who dealt with her. Jason's discovery. Jason Worley awoke in the basement to the sound of police and paramedics. Confused, he rushed upstairs, only to be met with the sight of flashing lights, uniforms, and the devastating news no parent could ever imagine. His 2 children were gone. His wife, the woman he once trusted, was the one responsible. Jason's grief was overwhelming. In that single moment, his world shattered beyond repair. The investigation. Police launched a full investigation, though Brandi had already confessed. The evidence was undeniable: the weapon, her injuries, and her own words. Detectives interviewed friends, family, and neighbors. They pieced together the timeline: Brandi's growing anger over the divorce, her fear of losing custody, and her decision to buy the knife. It became clear that this was not a crime of passion in the heat of the moment. It was planned, cold, calculated. The trial. Brandi was charged with 2 counts of murder. The legal process moved slowly, as it always does, but the evidence was overwhelming. In January 2018, Brandi Worley pleaded guilty. She offered no excuses, no explanations. Her plea spared Jason and the rest of her family from a drawn-out trial, but it also left haunting questions unanswered. During sentencing in March 2018, the judge listened to statements from Jason and others. Jason spoke through tears, describing his love for Tyler and Charlee, and the devastation Brandi had caused. The judge then delivered the sentence: 65 years for the murder of Tyler, and 55 years for the murder of Charlee. A total of 120 years in prison. Brandi showed little emotion as the sentence was read. Life in prison. Today, Brandi Worley is serving her sentence in the Indiana Women's Prison. She will never be released. She will never again walk free, never again see the world outside prison walls. Reports suggest she lives a quiet, withdrawn life behind bars. Her story is a reminder of how fragile the line can be between ordinary family life and unimaginable tragedy. The aftermath. For Jason Worley, life will never be the same. He lost everything in a single night: his children, his family, his sense of trust. He continues to live with that grief every day, a grief few can imagine. Tyler and Charlee's names live on through memorials, photographs, and the memories of those who loved them. Their short lives are remembered not for how they ended, but for the joy they brought to the world. Lessons and legacy. The Brandi Worley case raises painful questions. How can hidden mental health struggles erupt into violence? Could intervention have changed the outcome? What does this tragedy teach us about the importance of recognizing warning signs before it's too late? Experts in psychology describe this crime as maternal filicide, when a mother kills her children. In many cases, it is linked to depression, mental illness, or overwhelming life stress. In Brandi's case, it appears tied to control, despair, and fear of abandonment. But for the people of Darlington, Indiana, the labels don't ease the pain. What matters is that 2 young lives, full of promise, were stolen. Conclusion. The story of Brandi Worley is not just the story of a crime. It is the story of how isolation, despair, and unchecked anger can destroy everything. It is the story of how a single decision, made in the dark of night, can ripple outward to devastate an entire community. Brandi Worley will spend the rest of her life in prison. But the real sentence is carried by those who love Tyler and Charlee, by Jason, by the family, and by a community left to grapple with the horror of what happened behind closed doors in their quiet town. In the end, this is not just a story of betrayal. It is a warning. A reminder that behind the facade of normalcy, darkness can sometimes hide, and when it emerges, it can consume everything in its path.